Hey guys, in this one, we are going to go over some synths from Arty's remix of Schneider's Away From Here. This is probably one of my favorite all-time electronic pieces. It's definitely one of my favorite old school trance songs. I just think the melody is super beautiful, especially the longer break section. I think it's one of the most beautiful breaks in electronic music ever. So we're just going to go over the plucks first. I might do another video of the entire break section, but this is the section that we are going to be working off of. So yeah, I've always struggled getting the proper attack on these plucks. Arty has like the super strong attack on all of his plucks. And I think it just has to do with some sort of compression, probably some sort of compressor that he uses that clamps down on the sound very quickly. So that's something I'm still working on, but I definitely got closer this time around than I ever have before. So this is my creation of it. So yeah, this is made up of two patches. I initially started with just one patch with all the notes in this one track. I found that I couldn't get the kind of sharp attack that I wanted to get because it felt like the notes were all getting pushed into that compressor a little bit too hard. So there wasn't room for each of the attacks to kind of stand out. So the next thing I did was break it out into the high notes and the low notes. And that got me a little bit closer, but it wasn't quite there. So what I ended up doing is just the same thing, but there's a little bit of different compression on this higher patch. So these patches are pretty much the exact same. So I will go over this first one and then just touch on what might be different in the bass patch. So I will take off the processing. Before I get to that straight away, here are the Midi notes for the progression. Okay, so with just a saw wave, this is what the first patch sounds like. So I knew that this had to have some more voices there. It didn't feel like it was thick enough. So I added another saw oscillator with 7 voices, detune around 0.04, and that just helped to kind of thicken it up. I actually had the detune a little bit lower at the start, but as things progressed, I realized it had to be a little bit higher up. So we got a little bit more thickness in those voices. So with that saw oscillator, it sounds like this. So we're starting to get that thickness. And then I added some tube distortion. Every other type of distortion I tried to use just created too many weird harmonics. So this tube distortion's just adding a little bit of something, probably not too much. Just feels a touch thicker. And then with this filter, this is where we get the pluck sound. So I threw envelope 2 on there, 24 decibel per octave. And I am moving this cutoff up. So I was starting at 26 hertz. And then I move it up just a touch to around 100. And another thing that I realized is when creating this pluck shape, usually I just have this envelope coming all the way down with like 0 sustain. But I found that having a little bit more sustain allowed more of like this area of the pluck to still be alive as the note was hitting. Instead of just having this triangle pluck, there's still a little bit of information there. So with that envelope on, it sounds like this. And another thing that I am doing is automating the mod amounts of the envelope. So I'm automating how much this envelope is actually affecting this filter. So that allows this blue line to kind of become larger and more intense. So we're getting more of those high frequencies, but it's still retaining its pluck shape. So instead of just opening this cutoff, which would kind of flatten it out, we're getting this pluck shape all the way through, but just getting some of those high frequencies. And then I added some chorus to kind of thicken it up a little bit more. I just felt like it gave it a little bit more space and kind of felt more like the original. And then the compressor is really important for these type of plucks. It's how we get this sharp little attack area that you see in Arty's. So initially, like I said, in this first one, I had this compressor on, but I had the attack a little bit more open. So that was giving us that sharp attack. But what I found was that the notes themselves sounded a little bit too ununiform. Like there's a lot of differences in intensity. So what I tried to do was, instead of using this compressor for the entire shape, I was going to use this one to kind of give us a more uniform sound from the start. So 7 ratio, and then a quick attack and a fairly quick release. So with that on, it sounds like this. So I feel like that makes the notes a little bit more squeezed. So the volumes between notes are a little bit more similar. So the next thing I did was EQ. I took out some of the lows, and then this high area I'm boosting. This is something I see deadmau5 do a lot, especially with the 24 decibel per octave filters. He will boost this high range, so you're getting some of those higher frequencies from the start. It just kind of helps to build up this very bright climax as the filter is opening up. So this compressor is the second compressor in the chain, and this is where that really sharp attack comes from. So if you see, I have the attack opened up more, so the sound hits and then the compressor clamps down. So we're getting a sharper attack from the start, and then a pretty intense ratio. So with that on, it sounds like this. Without it on, it's not as sharp. It's subtle, but it definitely adds to that attack and that transient. And then I'm using a limiter just to push up the volume and cut off some of those peaks. Yeah, so that is the first patch. So this bass patch sounds like this. So this is where that very solid low end comes from. And like I said, it's the same patch. I guess the only other thing I did is I added this clap noise. The clap noise is going through this filter. It's the only oscillator going through this filter. And then I threw a bandpass on it. So it's kind of only hitting around this 2K range. And that was just to kind of help create some of that snappiness in the pluck. And then I'm doing the same thing with the tube distortion, the cutoff, and the envelope too, as well as automating the mod amounts. Doing the same thing with the chorus. And instead of having 2 compressors, I just had the one on this. So this is what it looked like in my earlier attempts. So that same kind of slightly longer attack, and then a sharp ratio and release just around kind of that 50 to 100 mark. And then I use this EQ to boost some of the lows. Again, some of the highs, that's just kind of left over from the EQ from the previous patch. And then I'm throwing it into a limiter as well. So with those together, it sounds like this. So we're getting more of that sharp attack there between the two. And then I grouped them together. This Serum effects, I was trying to add some high buzz on the top, just a touch. It sounded like in Arty's, there's this little bit of high kind of sizzle on the top. So it might be hard to hear, but it's very subtle. It's just this little subtle sheen over the top. And then one more thing that I did is I was trying to enhance that transient even more. So I threw a kick drum into a simpler, and then what I'm doing is I filtered it up to around 534, and then I rolled the top off. And this gives us kind of a little knock for each pluck. And then as well as that, I have this filter being automated. So as it moves up, we're getting more of those high frequencies of this kick drum. And that just added to the entire patch. So if I play it with it and without it, so you can hear that little like over the top of each of the plucks. So that is essentially all of the synth parts in this. The next thing to do was to throw it into some return tracks so we could get some of that space and the reverb and the delay. So I have this Serum effects using some plate reverb. These are the settings that I use. The high cut is up a little bit, so it's a little bit duller. So with that on, it sounds like this. And I am automating the send amount for both the bass and the top notes. So we're getting a little bit more reverb as the patch builds up. The next return track is this delay. Initially, I threw on some OTT to kind of crush the incoming signal. And that's because the delay in Arty's track sounded pretty bright from the beginning, even though at the beginning the plucks are pretty dark. And then I used this EQ to kind of brighten up the incoming signal even more. And then the delay is set at 400% wet. And I'm trying to emphasize this higher part. So it sounds like this. And then I threw some reverb on this delay track just to kind of give it a little bit of space for each of the delay hits, so it's not so dry. And then I'm using this compressor similar to the way I used it in the I Remember video. I'm crushing the delay and the reverb together, so we're getting a longer tail from this effect. And then what I am doing is I am sidechaining it to the pluck itself. So this is actually sidechaining to the initial pluck patch that I had. So it's just ducking the effects at the start of each pluck just a little bit. And I am also doing that on this reverb track. And then finally, I felt like there was some room for like a higher reverb. So I threw another Serum effects on it, and the high cut's down on this one, low cut's up. So we're getting more of that just high sparkle. So with that one on, it sounds like this. Just kind of gives us a little bit of sparkle over the top. So with all three of those effects on, we kind of get the final results. Yeah, so that is pretty much it for this one. I just tried to kind of match the effects that he had with some impacts at the start and then this riser at the end. And then at the very end here, we get this kind of like sub drop with this clap impact over the top. But that is pretty much it for this one. I guess the main points for this are using compressors to enhance the attacks of sounds, having the attack a little bit longer, so you're getting that initial signal hit, and then having a sharp ratio so the compressor clamps down on it really fast. And the effect of that is a sharper attack. But I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know if you want me to do other Arty songs. He's definitely one of my favorite producers. But thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all my patrons that have joined so far. I really appreciate you guys and supporting me. Yeah, it really means a lot to me. And I hope that I can continue to make video that will be helpful for you guys. So I will play this one more time for you, and then I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.